Can the President of Nigeria or any of the state governors take up positions in the executive committees of the political parties? Not many people seem to think so, but that's exactly the scenario that has been playing out in the All Progressives Congress, the political party which has controlled the appurtenances of governance in Nigeria in the last 7.5 years. What does the Constitution say about this? And why have there been a consistent jumble of interpretations from the legal community about this matter? For answers, we now turn to Kunle Adegoke, a senior advocate of Nigeria and a member of the All Progressives Congress. Good morning, Mr. Adegoke, SAN. Good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning. Right, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so very much. So let's talk about your party. It's the ruling party without a doubt, but then there are issues. It looks like the ruling party is struggling to put its house in order, especially when it concerns those who will run the affairs of the party. Last week, has been very interesting between Mai Malabuni and, of course, Governor Bello of Niger State. First, where are we? And can you trace this to the basic question, important question that was raised last year when the courts determined who eventually became the governor of Ondo State? Are we likely to have a case of the court coming to determine who is actually the chairman, or if it's been wrong all along to have a sitting governor to pretend over the affairs of a political party, as we have had Governor Mai Malabuni of Yobe State doing in the last 1.5 years? Is your party headed for an implosion if this thing is not handled carefully?
Thank you very much. It is a situation that requires to be handled carefully. There's no doubt about that. And it is quite clear, undisputable, that we are having a challenge on our hands. And I believe that it is a challenge that can be resolved. And with the maturity that has characterized what the leaders did in the past, I want to believe that this one will not be an exception and it will be resolved ultimately. When you look at it, the provisions of the Constitution with regards to the executive governor of a state or the president being forbidden from holding an executive office has been one that has been agitating the minds of thinking members of the community. And to this extent, we have a situation on hand where people are saying that Malabuni should not be governor of Yobe State and at the same time be the chairman of the caretaker committee of All Progressives Congress. And the question is whether this is a challenge that may require the court having to pronounce on it. Well, there isn't an issue that cannot go before the court once it is submitted to the court's jurisdiction. On the other hand, I believe that it's an issue that if all the individuals involved carefully understand what the Constitution is talking about, there won't be any dispute that cannot be resolved in this issue. When you look at it, the provision of Section 130, Section 138 and Section 183 of the Constitution, which both forbid the president and the governor from holding an executive office during the tenure that they are holding. What is the meaning of executive office? That is the first question that we need to resolve. If we understand what qualifies as an executive office, then we will ask whether membership or chairmanship of a caretaker committee of a political party or an ad hoc committee of a political party will qualify as an executive office within the context of the Constitution. And that will ultimately resolve the issue whether Mai Malabuni has to be chairman or member of the caretaker committee of the All Progressives Congress, which in any case will apply to any other party that is found in a similar situation. The point where we need to commence a probe is Section 5 of the Constitution itself. You see that it vests the executive powers of the Federation in the President and the executive powers of the state in the governor. However, this section does not actually create these offices. Section 130 of the Constitution actually creates the office of the President. And by creating the office of the President, under the chapter that is called Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the broad chapter that treats everything pertaining to the executive. It is actually headed the executive. So for us to appropriately interpret Section 138 that forbids the president from holding an executive office, and Section 183 that forbids the governor from holding an executive office, we need to understand what exactly qualifies as executive office. This can only be interpreted within the context of the Constitution and must be interpreted within what the Constitution has called the executive under Chapter 6 of the Constitution. When you look at it, Section 130 creates the office of the president, just like Section 176 of the Constitution creates the office of the governor. However, the executive is not limited to only the president. It goes further to create the office of ministers under Section 147. There shall be such number of ministers as the president may deem fit to appoint. The implication is that no particular ministry is sacrosanct. A ministry of works and housing today may become Ministry of Works alone tomorrow, and there may be a separate ministry for housing. But the implication is that once the president has created a particular ministry and has appointed a minister, he himself cannot be a minister in any other capacity, because the office of a minister is an executive office created by Section 147. So in line with Section 138, the president is forbidden from being a minister. Quare, that is a question. Can President Muhammadu Buhari today lawfully be Minister for Petroleum and Natural Resources? That is a question that must be looked into. And one will see that by virtue of the office of a minister being an executive office, then President Muhammadu Buhari will not qualify to hold the office of the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Resources. Well, my membership of APC is another thing, but the truth of this matter is that the president cannot be minister insofar as it's an executive office. The same thing will go for the governor. The governor has an obligation to appoint commissioners under Section 192, and he shall govern the state in consultation with the minister, with the commissioners, just like the president who govern the federation in consultation with the ministers. And to that extent, the governor cannot be a commissioner in his own cabinet, because that is another executive office. It's forbidden by the Constitution. Then when you look at it, this is the executive offices will not be limited to the president and the ministers alone. Equally, we have the office of the Attorney General of the Federation created under Section 150 of the Constitution. That is an office that is an executive office, and the president cannot hold this office. The same thing, the Constitution creates what we call in Section 151, Office of Special Advisors, and there shall be such special advisors as the president may appoint. The same thing goes for the governor under Section 196 of the Constitution. Section 195 actually creates the office of the Attorney General of the state. The implication is that the governor cannot be Attorney General, cannot be special advisor. These are offices that are forbidden as executive offices. Further, when we look at the Constitution, you will see that there are some other offices which are broad in nature, created by the Constitution that as executive offices under Chapter 6. One of such is federal executive bodies, like INEC, like the National Census Commission, like the National Population Commission. All these commissions created under the Constitution, which are regarded as federal executive bodies. The president cannot be a member or chairman of such bodies, except where the Constitution provides that the president shall be the chairman of a particular body. But in this instance, such federal executive bodies are executive offices under Section 138 of the Constitution. The same thing applies to the governor, as we have what we call state executive offices under Section 197 of the Constitution. Such executive offices of the state, like the Civil Service Commission, like the LASEC, I refer to it as LASEC because I'm familiar with Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission. The governor cannot be a member or chairman of such bodies. These are executive bodies as well. Furthermore, we now have what we refer to in the Constitution as the Civil Service of the Federation, the public service of the Federation. The public service can be said to be divided into two. We have what we call the civil service. We have what we call the military service. And under the military service, whereas, I mean, that may be said to be a broad terminology because it will include the police and then the armed forces. However, with respect to the civil aspect, in Section 169 of the Constitution, there's what is called the Civil Service of the Federation. And offices in the Civil Service of the Federation are executive offices in which the president cannot also appoint himself or take another executive appointment. The same thing goes for the state executive, the State Civil Service Commission. The governor cannot be an officer or a member in such a body. These are the offices that are referred to as executive offices under the Constitution, that the president or the governor, the deputy governor, or the cannot at the same time take, an appointment. And the implication is that where the president appoints himself as a minister, he will have to drop such an office. It doesn't go to his qualification. It cannot affect his election, because what qualifies somebody to be president is expressly laid down by the Constitution, qualification requirements. And these qualification requirements do not include what is referred to as taking an executive office. In the circumstance, we will come to the conclusion that a party ad hoc committee, like the one that Malabuni was or is still heading, or that Governor Bello is heading, is not an executive office contemplated by the Constitution that is forbidden. And to support this submission, you see that the Constitution goes further in the 5th schedule. In item 19, the 5th schedule defines certain terms. And in defining such terms, it defines a public officer. A public officer, somebody who is holding an executive office, is a public officer by the interpretation of the Constitution. And now, item 19 now defines a public officer to exclude a chairman or member of an ad hoc committee, or maybe any ad hoc body set up by even the government itself. It may be the government that sets up an ad hoc committee. The implication is that a public officer will not include such a particular office. Where there is a committee that is put in place, because a wrong interpretation it will amount to. If we say that the president cannot take any executive office in any capacity whatsoever, and we want to interpret that to include any body, any organ of an association that is referred to as an executive body. The implication is that the president cannot be chairman of ECOWAS.
All right, Mr. Adegoke, SAN, we will have to, there's so much to unpack, isn't there? But we'll have to continue this conversation after a very short break. There's so much to discuss. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us and welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We've been having a chat with Mr. Adegoke, SAN. Are you still with us? Yes. Thank you for staying with us.
Yes.
Okay, so let's steer this conversation back to the situation with Governor Malabuni in terms of his constitutional rights in the situation as we have seen it unfold. Popular opinion, and of course expectation rather, would be that if appointed by NEC, he should be removed by NEC. That was not the situation. On what grounds does the president have the rights to give the instruction for the way that events actually unfolded? And is that justifiable in any way?
Right. Well, there are organs in every political party, and the constitution of the party, in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, establishes what is called the party's executive committee, the National Executive Committee. Such executive committee is not the same thing as the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And where a committee is supposed to be composed or to be formed or established by the National Executive Committee of the party, but rather is formed by the President, definitely it is ultra vires, what people normally call ultra vires, the office of the President. The same thing will go for removal, because it is somebody who has the power to appoint under the Constitution that also has the power to remove. And that is consistent with the provisions of the Interpretation Act, to the effect that it is the appointer alone that can as well remove. For the president to remove Governor Mai Mala Buni, except if it was the president that appointed him. And the question now is that whether it is constitutional for the president to have even appointed him in the first place. So if it's unconstitutional for the president to have appointed him in the first place, then it is equally unconstitutional for the president to remove him. Both can be challenged. And the implication is that I believe that at this particular point in time, whatever error might have been committed in the process of politicking will have to be corrected. Will have to be corrected immediately.
All right. Well, in any case, President Buhari has said that the governor of Yobe State is expected to be back in the country on Monday to assume his position. Now, INEC had responded to a letter last week indicating that they were not aware of any leadership change. So I think, according to this morning, that has been resolved. Now, I wanted to ask you again, I wanted to go back to this idea of what qualifies as an executive office. Now, some have argued that when you say a governor cannot hold an executive position, now, can it be said that a state governor who is the chairman of the Governors Forum of Nigeria is occupying an executive office? Or, I think you were trying to allude to the fact that, the argument of the president cannot be appointed as the chairman of the African Union by indication of Section 183, which bars governors and presidents from holding executive positions.
Right. That is the absurdity that will characterize an interpretation that says executive office will mean just any executive office. The implication is that the president cannot be a member or chairman of Ansarudeen committee or of a Baptist convention committee or something, and that will reduce it to a high level of absurdity. The implication further would be that at the level of maybe international organizations, if the executive office as meant by the Constitution were to be such broadly interpreted to include just any office that may be tagged executive, then it means that the president will not even have the capacity to hold such an office at an international level. It will be forbidden by our Constitution, even if it is recognized in international law. There is a distinction between the position in international law and the position of the municipal law. And when it comes to enforcement, the international law is incapable of self-execution. And the same thing would apply in a situation where the president of the nation is being characterized as holding an executive office. Then we would ultimately end up dissolving most international organizations that Nigeria are subscribed to, or that won't be party to the performance of certain executive bodies therein. It is quite absurd and inconsistent with the intention of the draftsmen of the Constitution. So if you look at the Constitution critically, in actual fact, in interpreting the Constitution, it is required that it should be given liberal interpretation. However, in interpreting any provision of the Constitution, you have to look at the Constitution holistically. You just do not isolate one provision and then tag to it whatever interpretation that suits your consciousness. In such a situation, it is required that you look at the Constitution holistically, and that will give you the opportunity to be able to interpret a particular provision of the Constitution in a way that would not run another provision of the Constitution ineffective. So the Constitution must be given holistic interpretation. That is why we have to look at what constitutes executive office from the perspective of Section 5, that vests executive powers in the president and executive powers of the state in the governor, and now look at the creation of the office of the president and the governor. And we now trace it down to those offices referred to as the executive. In fact, it is a very broad and prominent term used in the Constitution and very, very prominent, tagged the executive. These are the offices that qualify to be referred to as the executive offices. And with such an understanding, then it would become easy except somebody who wants to go into an unnecessary mischief, that will still want to insist that the provision of Section 138 or 183 should be given isolated interpretation, which will not be consistent with the position of the law with respect to what the courts of the land have actually pronounced when it comes to interpreting the Constitution. The only instrument that we can refer to that can be consulted, the only legislation that is expressly mentioned by the Constitution in interpreting the Constitution itself is the Interpretation Act. However, where there is no solution looking at the Constitution, and there is no solution to the interpretation of a particular terminology or a particular word or a particular phrase in the Constitution. And the Interpretation Act, too, does not provide a solution to it. Only then can there be a consideration of an extraneous factor or extraneous item, or that can be referred to in order to get maybe a dictionary or maybe opinions of jurists that have given interpretation to maybe certain expressions before. It is only in such a situation that we can go outside the Constitution, where the Constitution has provided for what qualifies to be referred to as executive office. It is those items that should be referred to as executive office that the president or the governor cannot hold while their tenure lasts.
All right, Mr. Adegoke, I would still like to circle back to specific clarifications on the subjects that you have, touched on. And one is to, again, clarify for us, are you saying that a sitting governor serving as the chairman of the caretaker committee of the party is not holding another executive power? I'm asking you this question based on the threats from the main opposition party, PDP, basically saying that every congresses, every convention that Mai Mala Buni caretaker committee signs off on, will be litigious. It's something that they can challenge in court. So I'm asking again, for somebody who was meant to steer the affairs of the party for a particular period, not more than 6 months, but spending close to 2 years now, will you say that that is not an anomaly and therefore cannot be challenged in court? And then secondly, again, a clarification. It looks to us like it is Mai Mala Buni that will superintend over the convention. If that happens, would that not further compound the issue about the fact that somebody who has, pushed the boundaries of legality up till this point is now going forward as, purporting to be the chairman of the party, whereas in the last 1.5 years, maybe some other people will argue that, is been a caretaker chairman who has basically usurped the authority of a chairman that was not allowed to be. I mean, these are legal, considerations, but then you are a senior lawyer, sir. Talk to us in specific terms if you do not think that there will be basis along the line for another party to challenge this, what looks clearly like an anomaly.
Right. Well, when it comes to the maybe power or the right of another political party to challenge the activities of a fellow political party in court, there are certain things that we need to critically assess, that we need to critically look at. For instance, when it comes to maybe, there is such a challenge is not usually done for challenging's sake. It is normally done for certain political gains. And what are likely to be the political gains that PDP, for instance, or SDP, or NRC, or any other political party may want to gain by challenging the membership or chairmanship of Mai Mala Buni or any other member of the caretaker committee of All Progressives Congress is likely to be electoral office, where an election is held and probably APC has been declared winner, then probably the election of such winner should be challenged on the basis of qualification, that if the person who superintended over the process by which the governor or the deputy governor was nominated, if he did not have the authority, if he did not have the capacity legally to superintend over the process, then the entire process should be nullified to affect. Well, the point we need to understand is this. I think that is one thing that a particular individual or a group of individuals are taken to court in Osun concerning the last primary, that was conducted. And when you look at the decision of the Supreme Court in the Akeredolu's case, in Jegede and Akeredolu's case, you will see that the Supreme Court is quite categorical about it. One, can it be said that because the person who signed the nomination form of Governor Akeredolu was a sitting governor. On that basis, Akeredolu will not be qualified to contest the election. No, that is not it, because the Constitution is categorical when it comes to what qualifies you to contest an election. And when you look at the provision of the Constitution on qualification, it is that you are a Nigerian of a specified age, then you were nominated by a political party. If the party nominated you, the fact that the person that was chairman or whatever, was not supposed to be chairman, cannot invalidate your nomination. That is what the Supreme Court has pronounced in Jegede and Akeredolu, and that is the highest court of the land. The implication is that if anybody is seeking to challenge and invalidate the nomination of a governorship candidate or an elected governor on the basis of the chairman of the executive committee or the caretaker committee being a sitting governor, then in vain your bangles cast. I think the governor will just be chanting Wale Soyinka's Abiku to that fellow. However, when you look at the Constitution critically, you will see that grounds that would disqualify a person from aspiring to be president or from aspiring to be governor are specifically also stated. And one of such is not where a sitting governor presided over the caretaker committee of a political party. Then let us even look at, let us query PDP on this. Let us look at the constitution of PDP, which in any case is in all material particulars similar to that of APC. I'm not too sure if there are material differences. All the president, the sitting governors, the seven senators, and all such elected officers are members, automatic members, by virtue of APC's constitution and PDP's constitution. They are automatic members of the National Executive Committee. In fact, where the president is, when it comes to zonal executive committee, the president will be a member of the zonal executive committee of the zone where he comes from. The same thing goes for the governors. So if PDP is challenging APC's election or nomination process on account of Memalabuni being even not the chairman of substantive executive committee now, it is the caretaker committee is an ad hoc committee. It's not a standing committee. We must understand a distinction between an ad hoc committee and a standing committee. In this situation, we are talking about a standing committee, and I have referred to it earlier that such offices that are executive offices are otherwise referred to as public offices as well. Then, if occupants of such offices are to be referred to as public officers, the Constitution in item 19 of the 5th schedule defines a public officer not to include a chairman or member of ad hoc commissions, tribunals, or committees. Expressly, if you check item 19 of the 5th schedule of the Constitution, you see that expressly defined. So if Memalabuni, by virtue of being the chairman of an ad hoc committee of APC, which is just a caretaker committee, cannot be said to be a public officer, then it is not holding that office within the context of what the Constitution referred to as executive office. And on that basis, it cannot be a ground upon which PDP can make any capital political gain. So I think they may have to perish such thoughts. And if it is APC that is even lost in such an ambition, it will have to forget it. Because even the constitution of the parties, the constitutions of the two parties, make these individuals in their capacities as serving president or former president, then governor, senator, and what have you, to be members of the National Executive Committee. The implication is that the PDP nomination, the PDP nomination process, primaries, can also be invalidated. No political party will have a candidate because most political parties just copied PDP constitution or APC constitution. And there's no way you have a sitting president that will not be a member of your executive committee to know what is going on and to be able to contribute to the development of the political party. In those days, under UPN, Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the chairman of the party, and as well the candidate of the party on the two occasions that UPN contested elections. I was old enough to know that if I was not available in the 60s to know what operated under the various political parties. So the implication is that membership of, and where it is not forbidden by the Constitution. In fact, it may be debatable whether a constitution of a party can forbid the holding of such an executive office of a party. The political party is not referred to as part of the executives of the federation in the Constitution.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Kunle Adegoke, for joining us on the morning show this morning.